They started the game with a simple hope: keep the ship steady and inch toward January. Instead, one decision turned into a weather vane for everything the Steelers are right now: grit, gut, and a gamble that's already looking like a misplay. Mike Tomlin chose to start Aaron Rodgers against the Bills. It felt brave. It also might have been the moment that cost them more than a single Sunday. You remember the pictures. Rodgers, 41, with a fractured left wrist, trying to thread throws with one good hand. Rodgers, the legend, blood on his nose after a violent sack. Rodgers, the guy you signed to calm a messy offense, only to watch that calm become brittle under pressure. The sequence that followed, the fumble return for a touchdown, Mason Rudolph forced into duty, Rudolph's interception, it all happened fast. 2 plays, 2 turnovers, a lead that evaporated, a playoff season that suddenly feels shakier. Here's the gut-level question. Was starting Rodgers a coaching decision built on strategy, or an emotional pull toward pedigree and hope? On paper, the answer makes sense. Rodgers is a generational thinker. His presence lifts linemen, steadies young receivers, and widens play call options. In the locker room, a veteran like him changes the tone. But football games aren't led by mythology. They're won or lost by what bodies can reasonably do on a frozen afternoon in December. Against Buffalo, Rodgers' body and the very real limitations of a broken wrist reduced his toolbox. That's not a knock on courage. It's an arithmetic fact. Let's walk through the moment-by-moment reality. Weeks earlier, Rodgers suffered a fracture. Medical staff said no surgery. The man rehabilitated and returned, but he was not whole. Mason Rudolph, in the stretch between starts, had shown a kind of steady, if unspectacular, competence. Against Chicago, he threw a scoring pass, moved the offense, and kept Pittsburgh close. That performance did something important. It created an alternative. Rudolph didn't dazzle, but he did what backups must do: manage, protect the game, and limit mistakes. So the choice to go back to Rodgers wasn't the only reasonable option on the table. It was a choice built as much on narrative as it was on calculation. And the first half of Sunday felt like a cautionary exhibit. The offense was slow. Rodgers completed only 6 passes for 54 yards before the hit. Plays that used to be a blink and a release became long, deliberate sequences. Handoffs awkward because of a compromised grip, play action that lost steam, timing routes that required impossibly precise footwork. Buffalo smelled opportunity. Elite defenses do. When the pocket narrows and seconds evaporate, even great quarterbacks get exposed. The result was a sudden collapse of momentum. Sack, fumble, return for a TD. The image of Rodgers jogging to the sideline with blood on his face is cinematic, but it's also the perfect shorthand for a team caught between nostalgia and prudence. There's a broader truth here about how teams manage elite aging players. We lionize the finishers. We celebrate the guys who gut it out, and for good reason. It's heroic television. But the NFL does not reward sentiment. It rewards results. A coach's job, at its coldest, is to maximize wins, not moments. That means sometimes benching a beloved veteran because the numbers and risk-reward tilt in favor of a safer, less glamorous option. That's what the Steelers had in Rudolph. He wasn't flashy, but he was functional. In that context, Tomlin's decision reads more like faith than formula. Now let's be fair, this wasn't simply a Rodgers problem. The offense struggled to sustain drives. Special teams miscues, clock management, and a defense that had to bail the unit out earlier in the season all contributed to the pressure. Football is a chain. When one link weakens, the weight shows elsewhere. Yet there's a symbolic weight to who's under center when those links break. Choosing Rodgers told everyone, players, fans, opponents, that you were still fighting from the veteran's vantage. But it also handed the defense less margin for error when turnovers came. And in a division that's tight, margins are everything. Here's where the emotional arc gets sticky. Fans and media want a leader. They want a hero who walks into stormy weather and says, "I'll take it." Rodgers is that headline. But leaders also make hard choices for the team's long-term good. Mike Tomlin, historically, is a coach who understands that distinction, which is why this decision stings. It breaks the pattern. It feels like loyalty over logic at the worst possible time. The practical problem is that loyalty can be contagious in all the wrong ways. Players rise or retreat depending on what they see the coach value most. So what happens next? There are 3 roads ahead. 1, Rodgers recovers fully, the Steelers tweak protections, limit his exposure with quicker reads, and the team grinds out wins. If that's the path, the decision will look wise in hindsight. A veteran's pain-managed return that pushes a team into January. 2. Rodgers' body continues to be brittle. The team pays for those 2 game-changing turnovers, loses more close games, and the optics turn critical. Mike Tomlin's choice will get rehashed as a strategic error. Or 3, a middle ground where Rodgers starts some games, Rudolph others, and Pittsburgh finds identity through situational football, not a single passer. Reality tends to live somewhere in that middle ground, messy and complicated. But there's another layer, the ethical ledger. Who decides whether a 41-year-old plays on a fractured wrist? The player, the medical team, the coach? Every week, the league gives us a new version of this ethical puzzle. The right answer isn't always clear. Players have agency. They'll say they're fine. Medical staffs are tasked with neutrality, but the pressure to win is loud. Coaches balance roster futures against a single game's urgency. And fans, hungry for spectacle, often cheer choices that might later look reckless. The Rodgers episode is just another debate in that long-running NFL drama. Only now it has the added sting of playoff implications. Let me be blunt. Good teams prepare for January by making the hard calls in December. That's the quiet work of contenders, deciding roles, accepting temporary sacrifices, protecting the long-term asset. If Tomlin wanted to maximize win probability in the short term, leaving Rudolph in might have been the safer bet. If he wanted to stabilize locker room dynamics and send a message, starting Rodgers did that too. Both rationales have logic, both carry costs. Here's the last thing to say. Leadership is not only about big gestures. It's about choosing the option that gives your team the best chance to win, even when that option feels unsentimental. The narrative that a veteran must be on the field to lead is attractive. But leadership is also coachable. Clear plans, steady rotations, and honest assessments. If the Steelers come out of this stretch and say, we learned, we adjusted, we're better for it, then the hard lesson will have value. If not, this Sunday will stick as the flashpoint where hope bumped into reality and reality won. So what's the bottom image you'll carry from this? It's not the blood or the hit. It's the coin flip between legend and logic. A decision made in a moment that tells you a lot about a team's identity. Did Mike Tomlin choose his hero because he needed one, or because his team needed something more practical? That's the question the remainder of the season will answer. And whether you cheer the courage or criticize the call, remember this. In December, every choice counts, and every consequence echoes long after the final whistle. If you want one line to take home, here it is. Courage is a beautiful thing until it becomes the reason you lose what you hope to save. Mike Tomlin's latest decision already looks like a brutal mistake. Postseason preparation begins long before the final week of